if you offer God a sacrifice or an offering of some kind in your life, money, going to church, reading the Bible, praying, whatever you consider a sacrifice, if it's because you love Jesus, it can be a very good thing. However, there is something that is way more important to God than sacrifices and offerings that we can make, and all the offerings and sacrifices of the Old Testament. Here's what it is. I challenge you to look this up this week. Psalm 40, verses 6 through 8, basically say this much, that it's all about doing the will of God. In other words, it says that God wasn't pleased with all the sacrifices and offerings of the Old Testament. He didn't require them ultimately. He did want the Jews to do it for a time, but it wasn't his ultimate purpose with everything. It wasn't his ultimate goal with them. Well, he wasn't pleased with those things. Then it goes on to say, a body you have prepared for me. This is speaking of the Messiah that was to come, Christ Jesus. And it is written of me in the scroll, in the Old Testament, in the prophecies, I have come, it says, to do your will, O God. See, Jesus came, sometimes we get mixed up a little bit. Jesus, yes, he came to teach and to preach and to heal people and be compassionate and die on the cross and rise again. All that is true. But that is all flowing from the fact that he endeavored to do the will of God every single day of his life. That was his goal in life, to please his Father, to speak what he was supposed to speak, to do what he was supposed to do the will of God. That's why Jesus could say with a clean conscience and in perfection, those who do the will of God are my mother and my brothers and my sisters. In other words, my family. You're only part of the family of God. You are only a Christian if you are doing the will of God. That means, in simple terms, that means obeying. To do the will of God means obeying God, obeying Jesus, obeying the New Testament doctrine and more moral teachings, abiding by what Christ commanded us, how he commanded us to live. That's doing the will of God. And Jesus was the perfect teacher, our perfect master, and showed us how it ought to be, that he pleased and did the will of his Father, just as we ought to do the will of God. The writer of Hebrews in chapter 10 understood this perfectly. He quoted that psalm and reiterated the importance of it. So don't just today, here's my challenge, don't just think about sacrifices you can make for God. Don't just think about money you can give, but think about how can I read the Bible a lot and actually do the will of God. Put the word and the will of God into practice, into my life, and love Jesus while doing it.